the Now That We're a Family podcast.
All right. Well, Lisa Bass, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is so fun to see this in real life.
I know. We haven't done many in-person interviews just because of obviously logistics.
Right.
And so when we heard you were going to be in town, first off, you've been like one of maybe our most popular guests ever.
Wow.
Honestly.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I should have double checked, but I'm pretty sure I can confidently say you've been our most popular guest as far as like downloads and views and stuff like that. So when we saw you were going to be in town, we're like, man, I wonder if she'd be willing to come by. So thanks for coming by.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was actually a fun surprise too, because you got out of the car and then your husband and all the kids got out of the car.
Yeah.
And I was like, no way, we get the whole family. So it's pouring down rain, so all the kids are inside and we have no paper or pens or anything for them. So they're going to come up with a game and see what happens.
They'll come up with something.
Yeah, I know. We'll see afterwards what they come up with.
Yeah, so last time you were on, Lisa, you were getting pretty close to giving birth to your 8th child.
Okay.
Which now...
So about a year ago.
Yeah, now you've given birth.
Yeah.
And, we're kind of curious what that's been like, going from 7 to 8. You've got teenagers.
Right.
We're able to meet them. I mean, so far, we're pretty big fans of your family. So, so, we like seeing parents, that have older children, what they're doing, keeping a relationship with your older kids while having an infant. There's just a lot going on. Has there been any curveballs in having teenagers and then having a newborn? Because that's something that we could foresee ourselves potentially, being in that situation. What's that been like?
Are they being too loud?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, I'm sorry. Just making sure I don't need to because we can.
No.
Don't feel shy if you need to be like, get out of here.
No.
Sorry. Remember when the baby was first born? I kept saying this is level 8 because there'd be times when I was like, man, I thought I was busy before, and now level 8's crying. But after a while, just like with any transition, it's just part of it, and really, it's been a lot easier because of the teenagers too. So, I have 2 daughters that can help a ton. And one is very interested in kids and one is very interested in other things. So, of course, that one ends up helping more with the kids, which is totally fine because she wants to. So it's kind of, it's made it a lot easier, honestly. I don't know what happens if you have no kids who are interested in little kids. Like in your family, I'm sure there was some girls that were more interested.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it wasn't me, but it was.
It wasn't me either.
2 sisters down. Yeah.
So my sister, I have 3 little sisters, and my sister just below me, she was that one. And so she changed diapers, fed kids, put them, she just loved it. It was so fun. And still to this day, she's just a baby lover. I love my role and I love taking care of my kids, but it's not natural in the same way. So I have that same situation with mine. And it's just, it's really neat to see. But then my older daughter, she's better with playing with kids. She's better at organizing a game or, getting everybody, the other day, they were outside all day. And we have a sand pile. My husband just had a guy come dump a whole dump truck load of sand a couple years ago. And so it's just been there in the yard and they play with it. But the other day they wanted a pool. And so they got a tarp. They dug a huge hole, put the tarp in. And my oldest daughter, she was really excited about that and orchestrated all the kids around it. So she's really good at that. Whereas the younger one, she wouldn't do something like that, but she would take the baby all day, Yeah. So I mean, I don't know that there's been curveballs. It's just been really great. But we also don't do a whole lot of activities. None of the kids are in anything organized, really.
I was going to ask about that. What do you do with age-specific extracurriculars? Or do you just kind of not do that,
At this current time, we don't have anything. We've had, we've done one boy in soccer and one boy in baseball. And this year, we just kind of skipped it all. The girls used to be in gymnastics. They kind of outgrew that. In our area, it seems like everybody's 8 to 12 when they do gymnastics. So they've quit that. So there's really nothing organized, but that's not to say we don't do a lot of things. The girls will want to have a party with their friends and they'll organize this whole thing in the menu and I let them do all that kind of stuff, but not really anything. And then of course we travel. Here we are.
Exactly.
So we do fun stuff, just nothing organized.
Yeah, which I love. I mean, so much creativity and so many great memories are made that way. And you think about outside the box with okay, what's going to keep our kids engaged and be fun for them?
Right.
Versus oh, well, these are the things you do with kids,
Yes, and I've been reading 2 books recently. I've read Ginny Urich's The 1,000 Hours, Till the Streetlights Come On. And then I also just read Aaron Lochner's book, Opt-Out Family. And it's just talking so much about how much kids learn from unorganized time and how I think they said in 2030, 80% of the jobs, or maybe 85, that will exist don't exist yet. And so you need people who are going to be creative and think outside the box. And so in some ways, I feel like giving kids a lot of open time to figure out what to do with it is thinking outside, teaching, training, thinking outside the box. Because you can't train them on something that doesn't even exist. You have to train them to adapt. So anyways, that's my little tangent.
That's good.
I'm excited for those book reviews too, because I love Jenny Eric's. What was the other book? Did she write 1,000 Hours Outside?
Maybe, probably.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
but I haven't read the Till the Streetlights Come On.
I'm in the middle of that one right
now.
Opt-Out Family is so good.
Is it?
Did you have her on?
No.
You should have her on.
It sounds fantastic.
You would love it since you do your no smartphones and all that. Like,
Yeah,
because, you were talking about you can't teach them a job that doesn't exist, but you can teach them like flexibility, creativity, being adaptable.
Yeah.
But with that, you also have to give them the opportunity to be adaptable, right? Because even that, it just can't be in theory. It can't be in principle.
Yeah.
And even the example you gave, like in passing, your older daughter taking the kids out and making a pool out of like the sand pit. It's a perfect example of them taking the initiative to be creative, to be adaptable, and to make something out of, it's not something out of nothing, but it wasn't like this wasn't the,
I didn't organize any,
exactly. It wasn't
no
like practices
plan
at
for
this
me.
time and you got to, show up and listen to what the coach says. And so it's cool that not only you guys are really living into that. And I do think that's going to be extremely valuable to children now, but then also as they are adults, like you said, to be adaptable.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty cool.
I feel like my first few years of marriage, it was me trying to figure out, I had every moment pretty much spoken for from, between school, homework, sports. And so then the first 3 or 4 years was what do I do? With this open day. And it took me a while, and then I started to figure out, okay, there's so much to do and it's really fun and fulfilling. But I at first had no clue what to do with just open time like that.
Yeah. With that, have you guys, as far as you and your husband, Luke, when you were talking about, okay, we're not doing sports this year, some of these other sports that are more organized.
Yes.
And obviously you guys are extremely active as a family with various activities. Is that a year by year conversation, or is it a week by week conversation, a month by month? How does that conversation happen between the two of you? And with that, when you came into marriage, do you feel like either one of you had a preference that you had to, establish or compromise on when it came to sports or extracurricular activities or just academia in general? How's that journey been?
I probably came in thinking this is what you do with, I probably didn't think about it a lot, but if anything, since that's what I did, I probably thought, this is just what you do with kids, but once they got to the age where you would think about doing sports, it's been a year by year conversation. And then also you take into account kids' preferences. So everybody has different kids. So there's somebody out there right now who's how terrible, sports are so great. For some kids, it's crucial. They have just the spirit, that's what they need to do is be in organized sports. Mine are not like that. It's just personality. So we tried it, and whenever we said we weren't doing it, nobody really cared, at all. It wasn't a big deal. So that just tells you they're just not into it. They're just not.
Totally.
And some dads are really into it. Some dads are the coach, and that's all great. It's good bonding time. He's not a sports guy, not even a little bit. So it's just kind of of course we made children who also aren't. I was always doing it as a kid, but I was not very good. I could run fast, but I couldn't. I did this when the ball came at me. I always did it, but I was not good. I tried out in high school, and I didn't make the team. It just wasn't my thing. So naturally, we don't really have sports kids. So it's easy for me to say well, we're not doing sports, but for us, it's just not important.
It's funny. I was reading this book called 8 Errors Parents Make and How to Avoid Them. And one of the things he was saying was your kids will love what you love, right? Or, you'll have your weaknesses that you have or whatever.
Yes.
And so it's that just makes so much sense. It's for your family, it doesn't have to be, it'd be kind of forcing it.
Yeah.
To be we are going to be a sports family.
Yeah.
It's kind of you guys don't love it. So
no, we don't watch sports. We know nothing. It's just not our thing. And so, and your kid, it is funny when you have kids, you see all these things about yourself, bad and good. You're oh, I know where you got that. It just came natural.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or you hear the things they say and you're oh, you they're just puppeting what they've heard you say, it comes back.
Yeah.
I've heard you talk about these river trips you guys take. And I'm picturing that with a newborn and your 15-year-old. I don't know if that's the case because it sounds a little bit like a hazard. I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
if you guys are like, you know, if there's crazy rapids that you guys are going through. But I'm curious as to with those type of activities, how you've gone about tackling them, one, getting started. Because I think that's pretty, even things like that, camping or river trips or, you know, just hiking in general with a lot of kids is kind of an overwhelming concept.
Yeah.
For parents that are especially just trying to keep their kids alive within the house. So did you guys both grow up with a history in that, you and your husbands, where you just kind of like flowed into it? Or was that the type of thing where you're like, we want to get our kids out. How are we going to do this? And how does that look now? Like,
Right.
Is it all of you guys going out? Is it, you know, Luke or you taking some of the kids? What is that like?
So usually we divide and conquer, and it wasn't always like that. And it wasn't something that we're like, someday we're going to divide and conquer. It just, you start to see it happen, you know? So right now we have the big kids and the little kids, and then we have that fifth kid who kind of, he can go either way depending on what it is. You know, if we're going skiing, it's not him. If they're going floating, it is him. So it really depends, but it's usually me staying back because of the baby, and I'll stay with the younger four, and it's Luke going with older four, and we do it all the time. And to me, that's a good way to do it because, like you said, it would be a hazard to go on a float trip with all the kids. We tried it once. It's just not even fun because we want to get canoes, but you need to get a raft so you don't tip, and it's not fun to do the raft.
Yeah.
But I grew up doing this kind of stuff. Like my parents, we went skiing in the winter every single February, January, and then water skiing at the lakes in the summer. And so and then lots of float trips. I have a very outdoorsy type of family. They camp, they go horseback riding in Colorado, you know, all that kind of stuff. Luke didn't grow up doing as much stuff like that, but he is way more of an outside guy than me. Like, it's just natural. He just loves outside. He's outside all day. So I think it just comes very naturally to us. It's just something that we enjoy. And, you know, I love, like, even if I don't go, I have like a certain number of times I'm like, I hope you guys do like, you know, 6 float trips this year because that makes me feel good that you did that. Even if I don't go.
That's funny. We've experienced that. Like, I'm stoked when Katie's able to take the kids to the mountain for a day and vice versa. It's like you count it as a win. It's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
right,
I'm happy to stay home, be the
win.
mom at home, and you guys go. Like, I love that dad-kid time, and he's like a typical dad, very adventurous, you know, probably does things that I'm like, would rather not see, you know what I mean? So it's good. It's good for them.
Yeah, and I'm curious too, because that was kind of a question we had. That's questions we get from listeners is, okay, how do you get outside so much when it's like you live in a climate that's more hot and humid and stuff like that? Because your summers are like crazy hot and humid from what I know of. But I don't know. I mean, I'm over here in Idaho where it's dry. And so we talk about getting outside in the cold.
Right.
It's like I have no experience. Like our summers are perfect, you know?
Yeah, right.
So,
yeah, they are.
I mean, right now it's raining.
But
it
hasn't been super hot.
But yeah, usually it's like 70 to 80 degrees. So it's not like
I'm like 95 like at home, sticky.
Yeah.
So lots of water. Like we have like a sprinkler, you know, they made that little pool thing. Float trips, go to somebody's lake, like a neighbor has a lake and we'll go to that. I feel like if you're wet, you can do it. But we do tons of outside time all summer.
Yeah.
But we also live in the shade. Like where we live, it's all trees, so that's good too.
Okay, because you guys are out gardening and homesteading and all that in the heat too.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just do it.
Just lots of water. Like get yourself wet and you're good to go.
I love it. I love that.
Our kids have been doing that recently too. Yeah. Again, it's funny because as you've seen, our house is kind of, some of our listeners kind of know, we're kind of in the process of moving locations here with everything. So our house is a bit dilapidated, right? And so our trampoline's gone, the sprinklers are all gone in the backyard.
Right, that's hard.
And yet, like 3 days ago, I went out and the kids had taken a tub, right? They hadn't done this before and filled it with water, and they were just taking turns.
Adaptable.
They had a line.
Like a packing tub.
It was like a packing tub.
Yeah,
and they had a
like a
line,
tote,
and there's like, all right, each person got 30 seconds in the tub, and they got in, and they were out there for hours.
Right. Yeah.
You know, playing this game that they probably wouldn't have thought to play had the trampoline and sprinkler still been out there.
Right.
Which is pretty funny. I'm curious, you know, in regards to your business, just your online platform, selfishly, I kind of like to hear the origin story, right? Like a lot of our listeners are already familiar with you and the content that you create, which is so helpful. Going back to just like family business, entrepreneurialism, I think I've heard you say that your family's entrepreneurial. Is that true? Like your sisters and stuff like that?
Yes.
So did you grow up in that? And then like, how was that with you and your husband? You know, was it the type of thing where you're like, we want to be able to live on a property, work remotely or work online or have a business? Or is that one of those things that just kind of happened? And what did that look like?
Voteberg Music Academy is different than other music lessons because the whole family can learn together. So instead of paying for each individual to learn music, which Elisha and I know from past experience can add up to thousands of dollars a month that our parents paid for private music lessons, families are able to learn by instrument. So we love seeing mothers and daughters and fathers and sons and siblings all learn guitar together or all learn piano together for less than $40 a month. So if that sounds like something that you are interested in, we have a coupon code listed in the description box to get you started for 10% off every month that you are a part of the Voteberg Music Academy community.
From the beginning of our marriage, we did always think we would do something together, but obviously we got married in 2007. Like, this opportunity did not exist. Like, we didn't know what it would look like. We probably thought something more like brick and mortar style, because our parents both have always worked together. So my parents had a business, his parents just sold their business, but they both worked together. And so we always figured that's what we would do. So we didn't know what that would look like. And then in around 2015, I started thinking I should start a blog, And so it kind of went from there. I think we made the goal in 17 that he would quit in 18, and he did. And so I forget. Oh yeah, Entrepreneurial. I grew up very entrepreneurial. Like my parents, or my dad, I should say my dad. So the other day we were at a farmer's market and somebody came up and my mom was there and they're, your farmhouse on Boone's, mom? And my sister has a blog and my other sister like, your Arley house. Like, so how did you get them to be all entrepreneurs? She's like, oh, it's just their dad. He's just like that. So I guess my dad is very naturally entrepreneurial, and that rubbed off on us. And so we just thought we would do our own thing. I don't know.
Yeah. What did your dad do, or what did your parents do?
So they had a feed and farm type of business, and then they did like fertilizer. Like, it's so funny because now I do all this organic, non-GMO, and that was like my dad's whole livelihood.
Yeah, it's funny to see. Yeah, just like different generations do things different.
I mean,
but,
I'm sure if there was the internet, he would have figured out something online, but obviously there wasn't. And then mom kept all his books and that kind of stuff.
That's
great.
That's so cool. And so is that something, like when it comes to your own kids, do you feel like they're just going to pick up on your entrepreneurial spirit, or is that something where you're like, I'm going to teach you guys how to start a business, or how do you navigate that?
So there's a lot that you can train children to do, but there's so much that's innate. And I can see some of my kids are going to be like mechanics, electricians, things like that. And then I can see some of my kids are for sure going to have their own business. Like, I can just tell. It's just the wiring's there. So, I think it'll rub off / be innate to some of them. Mm-hmm. And some of them, it's like, you're just going to want to work with your hands. I can just tell that's what you're going to do. Yeah.
Do you guys talk very much about, you and your husband, about the, just like the general concept of teaching, your children to fish instead of giving them the fish? Because like you, and it sounds like your sisters have all like, it didn't seem like you were, in wanting to equip our kids, we can often enable, laziness or apathy, or cause entitlement. It doesn't seem that's the case with you and your sisters. Is that a conversation you and Luke have in regards to like, okay, how do we equip them so that they are ambitious, but then also not give them so much,
right? Yeah,
so they can just like sit on their hands the rest of their life. Is that something you guys are thinking about or talking about?
We think about it. I don't think we talk about it a whole lot, but I do think that we are like doing that. Like we give them so many jobs, like so much help around the house, it does not, and the farm, like it does not fall all on us. And that's something we are intentional about, like making sure that they're, involved in a lot of things and not just, giving them everything. So I think we do it, but I don't feel like we talk about it a lot. But I think if it started appearing that people were getting lazy, maybe we talk about it more.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like a farm does kind of lend to there being a lot of work.
Yes.
So
it's like, and the house, I mean, as you know, just like it's a constant thing, like taking care of kids. There's just laundry and food and dishes, and we all have to help. I mean, I can't do it all.
If you were to go back and like restart your business, is there anything with hindsight now that you're like, okay, I would totally have done this differently? Or do you feel kind of like, I mean, obviously it all works out.
I'm sure there are. Yeah. I mean, golly, if I could go back and start a blog in like 2009 with all the stuff I know now. Good grief. Yeah. That's what I do. So if you're listening to this back in 2009,
yes.
Get a blog, learn SEO.
Yeah.
But you still teach people how to do that.
I do. Yeah. And you still can. And it's great. But yeah, that's probably what I would do. But practically, I feel like there's maybe a few like anonymity things I would do different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not that like anything weird's happening. People ask me that all the time. Like literally nothing. It'd be nice to be able to like, you know, yeah, you can't unshare things. So
Yes.
Yeah, it's true.
Totally.
It's like you don't know what you don't know until you've already shared stuff. And then it's like, oh, well, now I can change going forward. But, you know. Yeah,
and there's a few questions I still don't know. Like my oldest really she's really into filmmaking. Like she can film and edit and like she wants to make a YouTube channel and she would do so good. But I'm like, she is going to be 16 this year. So I'm like, I think that's fine. But then part of me is like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's hard. That's a hard conversation whenever they're getting to that age where they want to make their own money, you know, and she has the skills. I know it'd be a good opportunity, but it's also, it's hard. I still don't know.
Yeah.
I still don't know the answer.
Well, I feel like we're even, I've been thinking of that already because our oldest son, he just has that like, he wants to be on the podcast. He's always asking, you know, yeah, right. Like, when can I be on the podcast? I could do one with you. I have lots of things I could talk about. Yeah. And so it's just kind of like, okay, so this is going to be a desire. You know, he's 7 right now, but it's like, when do you let him start into that world? Like, when's too early and when can they handle it? You know?
So my 11-year-old's the same exact way. He makes films all the time. He has put some on YouTube, but I've lately been pulling him back. I'm like, no, I don't think because mostly he tries to churn things out that aren't like polished enough, you know? Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, that's not worthy of YouTube. Like you should not put that up. But like, if he does make a good one, do I let him? Because he's 11. Now the 15-year-old, almost 16, or, you know, she'll be 16 this year. That's a little bit harder because like for him, it's like, sorry, no. But like 16-year-olds, when I was 16, I had a job. I drove a car to it. Like, you know, I had full responsibility. Like I could do whatever, you know, pretty much at 16. And so, I don't know.
Yeah, because even when I think of that scenario, that's true. Because same with me. I think similarly with Katie, when I was 14, 15, 16, I was entrepreneurial. My parents let me pursue starting my own businesses. But it seemed like they didn't have this like public-facing potential, right?
It was
like,
a lot different.
Yeah, exactly. Like my customers, or, you know, even when I was starting to teach private music lessons, like the mistakes or the negative feedback was like very one-on-one, right? And now it's like the internet does seem so big,
yes,
right? And
it is.
And so that's a real, and yet here we are. Obviously, we're advocates of online business,
right?
And so you don't want to like,
you know what the opportunity is.
Yeah, it seems like hypocritical to discourage your kids from it. And so
the nice thing is that you can like preview stuff before it goes out too.
Yes.
Well, and that's like 100%. Like I would never let her throw something out there before me looking through it, making sure she's not sharing anything too much. So definitely, and I also wouldn't let her look at comments.
Yes.
But yeah, I just don't know. I mean, I think we're going to let her. Like she's filming things, but
how exciting.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tricky.
That'll be fun. I think that last point though is crucial, not letting them look at comments.
Maybe just turn them off.
Yeah, turn them off. Because I think that I go back to me as a 14, 15, 16-year-old, boy, just like both on both the positive feedback and the negative feedback.
Both. Yeah.
How that just would have messed with me so much.
Yeah.
And there is an element of just being a more established adult, secure in a marriage.
Right.
Like where all of a sudden the comments and the feedback, they don't have the same
exactly.
Effect on you. So I think that's a really wise thing.
Yeah.
That's cool.
How have you navigated so far? You know, you have a 16-year-old, like technology, phones. How do you do that? Like when you need to contact your kids, do they have phones? How do you have those discussions with them?
So they do not have phones. We did just get a Gab because, well, they're a podcast sponsor. So we got one, and I actually let my 13-year-old kind of take it over instead of the 15-year-old. I don't know. She forgets it at home like all the time. I'm like, will you charge that darn phone? Like, I want you to bring it to this because it is nice. Like they're going to be running around that expo, and I want to, you know, it'd be nice to reach out to them. But so far we have not like done it at all. Like they haven't been on any social media or anything. And since we're homeschooling, that's not really a conversation. I think it's a much bigger conversation when you send your kids to school. Like everybody, I think, has one at like age 10.
Yeah.
So it hasn't really been an issue. I don't I don't exactly know how we'll do it. I don't know. Like I know at some point you just give them like total freedom. So I don't know. So far it hasn't been an issue.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. We just recently got back from a trip and Katie forgot. Well, yeah. We forgot Katie's phone.
Well, yeah, you have a flip phone, and that's not very tempting to
But
want
it
to
is
hear
tricky.
about.
Like communication is still. Yeah,
Yes.
again, we have flip phones, but just the ability to get a hold of like.
Oh,
I'm
absolutely.
picturing, like you said, at that expo, and like if they're across the fairgrounds
It's
or
real
whatever.
nice. Yeah,
it is nice.
The boys brought walkie-talkies.
There you go. That's
So
good. That's
they'll
good.
probably do that, but. Yeah, and Luke and I will go on date nights, and the older kids can babysit. And we used, before we had the gap phone, we just leave one of our phones.
Yes.
And they could communicate that way. So we let them watch like shows and things like that. We have approved YouTube channels they can watch, but we haven't like had to deal with any TikTok, Instagram, anything like that with our kids yet at all.
That's nice.
I hope to never. Like I try to keep the conversation like very, like yes, I'm on these things. I have a business on here. And when it's on my phone, I get very sucked in. Like I am not above it. Like if Instagram is on my phone, it's like I start just scrolling. And so I tell them that all the time. Like it's not worth, like it just, yeah.
Yeah, well, even
So
your
yeah.
conversation around like starting a YouTube channel versus like an Instagram account or a TikTok account or something like that. Like I'd way prefer my kids to like do a podcast, do a YouTube channel,
Yes.
do something like that where you're like genuinely like creating and there's not this like fast, crazy, suck you in content. Because I mean, obviously you could watch a YouTube video, but it's just different than all the stuff that pops up on the like short media platforms.
Yeah. And just for your brain, like
Yeah.
it feels so chaotic. You know, like, oh, I just scrolled for however long and I don't even know what I learned.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have a clear takeaway like you would if you watched a YouTube video or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. Oh man, isn't that the worst feeling? Like,
Oh, it
closing
is.
your
I've
computer
only
or
done it a
confirm-
few
yeah.
times where like the classic, like
Yes.
just I'm like, oh, what have I done with my
Yeah.
last
Yes,
hour?
exactly. So with the homeschooling, is that something you guys have done from the get with your children?
Yeah.
Okay.
We made the decision when I was pregnant with Ruth.
No
so
way.
yeah.
Wow. Good for you
Yeah.
guys. That's pretty cool. And you were just mentioning you said you were in a similar stage where you had 5 children living in more of a suburban environment.
Yes.
That's currently where we're at. And what was different when you look back now versus like being, because still, I mean, the majority of our listeners are going to be living in town,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Having smaller homes and maybe working towards having property someday or wanting to get there. But what are some things that looking back, because I guess what I'm saying is it's easy, I think, to be like, well, if we had property, right, like we'd be outside playing all the time. And yet I do feel like a lot of those habits start before you have property. You
Yeah.
know? And so when you look back, just in regards to homeschooling, routine, being outside, what are some things you guys adopted right away in the more suburban lifestyle that helped you, when you moved to the country?
Yeah.
And what are some things that, were totally not helpful?
So when we did a lot of like meetups, like I would meet friends over at the park. We did that all the time. Tried to get outside, keep them out till like lunch, go meet lunch, put them to nap. Like that kind of saved my sanity. But then we also we got chickens in town. We had a garden. We had a little 1/4 acre, but we just made like the whole thing garden and chickens. And some people aren't allowed to do that, but learned to bake bread, tried to like learn some of that stuff, but it was harder. Like I will admit, it is way harder to get your kids outside in that situation because we lived on a busy street in the front. Then the back was a public park. And so you're worried about like strangers, cars, all the things. And so that's like the main reason we want to get to property. Like I like homesteading and all that kind of stuff. But like the number one reason was more places just to send kids out and not have to constantly worry about them. So yeah, I definitely think it's harder. Like you guys are going to find out that it's like so much easier to have a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
But then also my kids have gotten older. So in that time now, we have kids who are old enough, they could go outside no matter where we lived by themselves. They could probably walk down the street to the park by themselves now. But, that was a different stage too because they were all under 10.
Yeah, well, I'm curious how the flow of the home has gone, because I feel like the farm and like the seasons of the farm give you a natural flow, right? Like I don't know if you guys currently have a milk cow, but I know you've had a milk cow. Like that's
Yeah, we
something
don't
that keeps-
currently.
Okay.
That's when I planned all these trips was earlier when our milk cow died over the winter.
Oh, okay.
And so we're like, let's just not get one for a while and try out this whole like traveling places thing. But this is our last trip.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Because like a milk cow keeps you on a
Yes, it
daily
does. Like we didn't
schedule.
leave for a year,
Right.
And then,
Chickens can do that, and then obviously the harvest season, you're in the
Yes.
planting season, all of that. Did you And so I've heard you talk about kind of like, oh, we've got more of a laid back approach to our schedule, but then life keeps you on schedule too, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so were you guys still laid back when you were in town, or were you a little bit more structured because you didn't have the farm life to keep you structured?
I definitely was more structured. Now it's so different because 6 months before we moved to our new property, Luke quit his job. So like everything about life, like, you guys know, like husband and wife working together, raising kids together, homeschooling together, that's a whole dynamic on its own that you have to sort out. So when I was a stay-at-home mom of 5 little kids, that's a whole different season. Like you're not really worried about homeschool. I mean, they were little enough that like homeschool was no big deal. I mean, you guys are still in that, honestly. Like you do it, but it's not like as big of a deal, you know? And so you have your like, very much like little kids, you keep them on a schedule. You have breakfast, and then you maybe do school, and then you maybe do lunch, and then nap time. And then your husband comes home from work. You do evening family stuff, dinner, bedtime. Like it's very structured, and it's so different. So it's hard. I was way more, I think, structured, that like implementing structure, as opposed to now it kind of seems to happen more by the seasons. Yes.
Yeah.
And how does Luke help you? Like, how do you guys do the homeschooling together? So Elisha and I right now, we don't do, I mean, he does music, and then I do the rest of the kids' stuff. But like, I think I've heard that you guys kind of tag team the homeschooling.
Yeah.
How does that look for you guys?
It looks different each year based on kids.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
Like there was, I think a couple years ago, I took the baby and the toddler and the 4-year-old, like the 4-2 baby situation. And he did like the older kids, so I kept them out of his hair. And then this last year, we kind of more tag teamed it. Like he took the 2 boys that needed the most intense help at the time, the 11 and 8-year-old. And then I helped the older girls and kept care of the little ones. So it just depends on the year, honestly.
Okay.
Because there's times when like those 2 boys needed extra help with reading and stuff. They weren't as easy to teach as some other kids. So you kind of figure out what are we working with right now? Like, are we trying to do reading and long division? All right, well then one parent probably needs to be on that situation with those boys.
Yeah, that makes sense. So instead of like doing maybe like subject, like he's taking math, you're taking English, like stuff like that, you do it more like child by child.
Yeah, that's how we've done it so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That's fun. You mentioned in passing a bit ago that you guys can go on dates now, and the kids are at home. Was there like a particular age where you felt like you could do that? Was it, I mean, if it's like totally crazy, you don't have to say it.
No,
I'm sure,
I mean, I think it was like 13 and 11, like when
nice.
the girls were 13 and 11. But like looking back now, I don't know, like that's even plenty old, honestly.
Yes.
But
yeah, I was going to say, I think I was 10 the first time my parents did an overnight.
Overnight?
Yeah. Yeah.
well, okay, so
But I like melted down on the phone with them, and
You're like,
we
I'm
didn't
so
do it again
scared.
for a while. Yeah.
in these books I'm reading, so I told you about those 2 books I read, and then I'm also reading, I think it's called The Coddling of the American Mind or something like that.
Yes.
All of them are talking about how we parent today, like the way we worry and helicopter, and we don't give kids any freedom, and how bad it is. And I'm just like that. Like I'm a product of this culture. Like that sounds insane to people.
Yeah, yeah.
It wasn't.
Yeah. Like
It
call
wasn't.
CPS. Yeah,
Yes, like
totally.
call CPS. You are, and I even noticed that like when we were walking through the airport, one of my kids like touched something on the wall, and somebody's like, "Watch out, that has sharp edges." I'm like, that's what are we like? And I'm in the middle of reading these 3 books, and I'm like, see, that's it. Like we can't let kids do anything, and I'm trying to like start to realize that like. It has a lot of reasons for why this happened, but like when kids, there's like developmentally something about knowing that you are responsible for yourself and independent, and you're taking on some element of risk. Mm-hmm. I mean, cause I don't let my 11-year-old would love to walk to town, cause we actually live fairly close to town. I don't let him do that. And like reading this book, I'm like, that's kind of weird. Like, it's kind of weird that I'm not letting him do that. I'm still not ready. Yeah. Because apparently our world, and I know I'm taking a tangent here, but like it's actually not more dangerous. Like there's less kidnappings.
Way less kidnappings. And yet we're like still terrified of it, because if there is one, it's like super publicized.
Yes.
And it's like where our kids are getting hurt is in close relationship with people that we think we trust.
And we're not scared of the internet.
Yes. No, exactly.
That's safe. But physically, we're like terrified. Like we are... The things that we do is actually like, and reading these books are eye-opening, because I'm like, wow, we are weird. Like kids are capable of so much. Like this is new. People are like, well, back in my day we did this. Well, that we think, well, that was crazy. Like your parents should have watched you, but actually there was some developmentally like important things happening.
Yeah,
like
but now we have like very underdeveloped, like
Yes.
emotionally, mentally,
All this.
physically
Yeah.
adults that are like totally incapable.
And they think the world's scary.
Yeah, they're terrified. So they just stay at home
Yes.
in front of a screen.
Yeah. And so, yeah, these books are like, oh my goodness. Cause I feel like we're definitely like, we do things very alternatively, but also I'm like, I still think I fall into, and my sister too, like the things we worry about, I'm like, that's kind of strange. Like our kids could handle that.
Wow.
So anyways, that's a whole process for me. I'm not there. You know, I'm still like tightening the reins a little bit, but yeah.
Okay, so that third book is The Coddling of the American Mind. you
Yeah.
said?
Something like that. I have it on Audible.
I'm stoked.
The other
about
two I
these
read
three.
physically, and then I have my Audible book too. But yeah, it's pretty eye-opening. Like the history of parents and the freedom they gave their kids, and just where we were and where we are now is like really eye-opening.
Yeah, it's
Check
gonna
it
be
out.
fun to dig into that.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to like, even now in this conversation, I'm just like, where am I? Because I think I'm prone to, I mean, yeah, again, we're hopefully getting ready to move out here to a more rural situation. And so when it comes to like a property and climbing trees and, you know,
Yeah.
playing out
Or
in the
not
woods.
seeing your kids for an hour.
Yeah, like I'm very comfortable with that because that's how I grew up. And so even wild animals, I'm like, man, we're close to the house. Like it's just, I'm not worried about it. You know,
Yeah.
we've got a dog. But like kids playing at the park, like walking to the basketball courts or
Yeah.
going whatever to the skate park. I'm like, no way. Like
And I'm
that's-
with you.
And
I'm there too.
and
Yeah.
I don't. And at the same time, I'm not like put them on a screen instead. Okay, so I'm not
Yes,
doing that.
right. And that's what a lot of parents are doing, according to the statistics. Like they're spending like 7 minutes outside and like 7 hours in front of a screen on average. And it's because the parents want to keep them safe. That's why. Like it's because we feel like people always ask, like it's a constant question. Well, how do you make dinner with all those kids? I'm like, well, first of all, I only have like 2 little kids. The rest of them they can be up in their room. They can be outside. Like I don't have to constantly, like they're thinking I should have 8 kids, like literally hanging on me as I'm making dinner. That's how the comments make it sound,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, I think that's what they picture.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah,
Yes.
it's like everyone's right there.
Yeah.
clustering
And a
around
lot
you.
of times too, they are around. They're just outside of the camera. But like people think they have to watch their kids like 100% of the time because the world is so scary. And I think I fall into that more than I even should, but yeah, it's a different culture.
Kind of
Yeah.
crazy.
And it's hard for you guys because with your oldest being 7, like it's hard to fathom maybe like what it would be like if he was 11. Like then
Yeah.
could he walk to the park? I mean, I still have not let mine, but
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I'm trying because we're generally optimistic people, and we want to equip our kids to obviously go engage in the world. But then, you know, like
Well, I think you definitely
I'm a
lean.
little paranoid.
I
Yeah,
think
well, I don't know. Like my brother's, you know, a cop. One of my best friends is a cop.
that
and you
doesn't
just
help.
hear,
Yes,
That's-
yeah.
even in our town, you're like, boy. Like,
But even the
kids
things that happen to those kids, it's usually someone who knows them.
I'm not talking about like abuse, and because that obviously is, you know, a very sad thing, and it's terrible. And it's usually, yeah, like you said, domestic or somebody close by. I'm just talking about like even just drugs, like how many people die because they didn't even realize they were getting fentanyl. I mean, I know that's a totally different.
yeah, but I guess with your
11-year-old's
brother being a
gonna be
cop,
like-
that's the kind of thing that
Yeah,
you're
like-
hearing about. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, I don't really think that when I think of my 11-year-old going to the park. Like,
But that's where it happens, I guess, is what I'm
I
saying.
think they're
Yeah.
going to pluck them and put them in their car and take them away
Yeah.
forever.
Right.
that's I
And,
think,
and
more of the
statistically,
fear.
that shouldn't be my concern. I should be afraid he's not going to look across the street and get hit by a car, maybe.
Yeah.
But like my main concern, if it was just cars, I would think I'd be fine because I'd be like, well, you're most likely going to look. I mean, he's aware.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to get plucked and put in somebody's car and taken forever. And that's statistically, that's a really weird concern.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's super crazy. Even with like the trafficking thing, I feel like they've gotten so specific, and like it's still like parents going and dropping their kids off at like what they think is a like an audition for child acting or something like that, and they put them in
Okay.
a truck and take them. You know, but it's not like a drive-by on the street. It's like
Interesting.
people have gotten kind of sophisticated, and like you don't just need to nab kids. You can set something up where parents are like, a parents' night out, great. You know, like parents have
Okay.
this like freedom to drop their kids off if
Places
there's
where
another
you feel
adult
safe.
there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Instead of letting the kid be independent, they're thinking, oh, well, there's a trained professional here that'll take care of my kid. And that's when, like, you know, bad stuff happens because we have too much trust in maybe
those kind of organized things. Like here, do you see 11, 12-year-olds walking around by themselves?
Yeah.
All the time.
You do? Okay. Because where I live, I feel like I don't. Like, I feel like I do not see any kids. Like, if they're older, they're probably inside on like a device. If they're younger, they're not allowed out.
And we do live. That is specifically our street.
Our neighborhood.
Yeah, I see that.
People move to this neighborhood
because
so their
of that.
kids.
That
can,
makes sense.
I think,
That
do
makes sense.
So that is a very unique thing, and it's actually
Very
this
unique.
part of the neighborhood. Because even other parts of the neighborhood, it's not that way. But like we see our 2 parks, and it's like people cluster here for that.
Yeah.
So I do think we have a little unique situation that way.
Yes.
Because it's true, you drive through other neighborhoods, and it's just like
No, I
empty.
never see kids out.
Yeah.
Never.
Wow, that's so sad. Have you always been a reader, or is that something?
No,
that
this is totally new. Oh, really? This is making me sound like I really read. No, lately I'm like, I'm going to start reading. Like, I'm going to carry around a book instead of my phone and like read whenever you have like a minute, you know? So yeah, no.
Okay, I was going to say, I'm like, where have you been my whole life?
Nope.
Like, you've been sitting down here and you've already listed 3 recommendations I've never heard of.
Well, we have a joke because we're not readers in my family, and my dad, like, he'll tell you, he'll be like, I read a book one time. And so I was like, I read a book once, you know? And so that's kind of really me. Like, I read a book once, like, you know, this last month.
Wow.
So have you been enjoying it? What do you think?
Yes.
Like,
I
just
know.
like
People have some good thoughts.
Yeah.
Like,
Go
they
figure.
really thought through this, you know?
That's great.
I do think that's the benefit even of reading a book too versus listening to like
Oh, yeah.
a podcast
I get
or
more
something
from
like
it.
that. You have to, and they really have to like flesh out their whole, like anyone who's written a book knows like how much work and
I'm also so
sifting.
impressed with them. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, same.
Like, I'm really like, wish I had
Yes.
read that book before you were on my, like their book before they're on my podcast. Cause I'm like, go you. Like,
Yeah,
the idea was cool, but the book, wow.
Yeah.
It
that
was
makes
really
sense.
cool. Yeah, lots of effort.
Do you have cookbooks or do you?
I have one coming out this fall.
Okay, you do. Well,
Yes.
that's exciting. Good
Yeah.
for you. And how's that process been making that?
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot. Yeah.
Like way different than posting recipes on the blog.
Oh, way different.
And so what are like the main differences?
Well, mostly because it feels so permanent. I'm like, I got to get this perfectly right. Like, yeah, it's been on the blog for 2 years now, but now I'm like, is it really a good recipe? And then figuring out like the whole like grams to, you know, conversions, that's been really hard because
Like exact
a cup of
measurements.
a cup of flour is not always the same gram anyways.
Oh.
So yeah, just the precision I think has been the thing that's
Interesting.
been the most challenging. And then also there's different language I thought you just like take my recipes, put them in a book. No, it's like a whole different thing.
Got it. Nice. Are you doing some photos with this as well? Has that been fun? Like getting
yes,
some...
it's all done now, but
Oh,
yes,
okay, cool.
it was a lot like over the winter.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yes.
Good for you.
Yep.
Yeah, congrats.
Thanks.
That coming out. In regards to even just like date nights and family, like have you and Luke had to find ways to like be more intentional about being you and Luke as the children have gotten older? Or is that the type of thing where it's just like you just have fun talking about whatever and what, you know, at any time and having your own interests? Because I mean, I feel like that's a common story, right? Is it like the marriage becomes all about the kids, right?
Yeah.
Or all about the farm. What has that journey been like?
I feel like because we're together all the time, like we're so involved in that. Like people say, oh, when we go on date night, we just talk about the kids. I don't feel like we do that at all because we're doing that all day long. Like it's not like we've been living our own lives and now we got to compare notes. Like we really usually we're pretty good about like not worrying about stuff like that, you know? I don't know. I think we do decent at it.
Yeah.
By getting out together and just sitting and talking and pretty
regular.
regularly. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is nice that you can do it. I was just talking to a friend about that because they have, you know, quite a few kids as well that are young. And they're like, man, it's getting harder and harder to find a babysitter, you know, like they just have their
I was
sixth
there
child.
too. Yeah.
And I was like, well, your oldest is actually here only a couple years away from, I was telling him this, you know, being able to take the kids. He's like, I had never thought of that.
Yeah, you don't because you feel like it's like a permanent situation.
Yeah.
It does not like all of a sudden like, whoa, we're here. You know?
So it's like this little transition where it's like, okay, your kids are young enough and there's few of them that you can get a babysitter.
Hopefully, yeah.
And then
there's that weird time where
there's the time frame, where they aren't old enough.
yes,
and then
but yet
bust
you have
through.
too many kids to really get a babysitter that's
Yes.
comfortable with it.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you bust through. Yeah.
I know we got a new babysitter is helping with the kids with the 5, and then we got the puppy. And then now it's like the 5 kids and the puppy.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I know. And then I don't know what we're going to do, but anyways, we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be a short. I mean, yeah, your oldest is 7, but still, like, it just before you know it, there you are. It's all different. All the time along the way, it's always just changing. Like, people always ask me, like, this and this. I'm like, it's just such a moving target, you know. And
you seem so adaptable. Just like as it all changes,
over the years, it's been easier and easier to do that. That's what I think I was actually just referencing your podcast where you asked, is 2 easier than 10? Or no, 10 easier than 2.
Yes. Yes.
On one of my recent YouTube videos, I don't think it came out yet, but I already have it scheduled to go out. But I totally related with everything you said. It is. Like, I don't have 10 kids, but just like, I don't think it's that the work is actually easier, because it's not. I mean, like, you know, we're on vacation, there's laundry, there's food. I mean, all of it, you know, obviously. But it's the mindset. And I think that's pretty much what you guys concluded. It's like the mindset of it all, and not being able to blow out of proportion to like little things is what makes it easier. Yeah. I've heard that having 3 kids is the hardest, because you still can control everything, but it's too much to really control. Yes. And then once you lose control, you're good.
Yeah, you're right. That's probably why people say it transitions at 4.
Yeah.
Because that makes sense. Because like 4 for me was still so hard. I'm like, why do people say this is like 3's the hardest? Like 4 is another
you had enough
kid,
capacity
right?
to still control 4.
I think actually
it took longer to break you.
I think that might have been it. I think we really broke down at 5, and now we're like being pregnant with the 6th and everything. We're just kind of like, okay, let's just have a big family at this point. You know, we were talking about like there does seem to come a time in a couple's, like if you keep your childbearing journey going, where you transition enough where you just kind of, it feels like, okay, I can handle a lot more kids.
Yes.
I just have a totally different mindset now with it.
And so when people ask you questions, they're assuming that mindset. And so they just are like, how? I'm like, it's so different. I can't even explain it. You almost have to live it to see it.
Yeah. You have to go through the wardrobe.
Exactly.
Into the big family side.
Yeah. Yes.
It's just a whole new world over there.
It is. Yeah. It's like a magical new world. And I've seen it with other families who've gone before me, but it's just kind of hard to understand the dynamics. It's like, I can't even explain it necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's cool to hear that's been true for you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Because obviously it's still mostly theoretical for us. We thought it was the case for our families. But it's fun to hear that, you know, coming from, you guys have the 8 children. And so.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's good.
Very full house.
It's a lot, but also, like having the older kids, it's such a wide range and lots going on, but not all the little kids. Like if you had 8 little kids, that'd be really something.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny. Even we were just over at a music camp at Elisha's parents' house, and so he was taking the older 2 kids in to like classes, and I had the younger 3 and our puppy. And I was like, what's funny is this is way harder. Like I felt like a flashback to when I just had the 3 kids. I was like, this is way harder than having Leon and Lucy with us. And I didn't realize how helpful they are. Yeah. Which is like, if I'm tied up, they can go grab something real quick, or like they can watch the little one while I go do something. And I was like, it's funny how even with the 7 and a 6-year-old, 5 is easier than the 3 are when I'm just home with the 3.
If I'm ever home with like the younger 5, it's funny. I instantly am like, hey, Micah, go do this. Whereas I never ask Micah to do anything because he's 6. Exactly. Yeah. But like when the older ones are gone, all of a sudden he's like number one man. I'm like, go get me this, go do this. Hey, will you go chase him? Like, you know, you're relying on whoever's the oldest at that time. But it's funny how quick you adapt to, like, if I've ever left home with the 3 kids, like, ooh, like I have to like get my bearings about me, but it's a whole different thing. Like everything about it's different. Like I schedule my day differently. We eat different foods, but you quickly adapt and you realize, okay, that was a whole different season of life that I haven't visited in a while.
Yeah, that's crazy. Nice.
Yeah, well, I know you've got a busy day. You got a busy weekend ahead of you, so we can wrap this thing up. You mentioned the book. Can people order that yet?
Yes, it just launched for pre-order on homesteadliving.com/daily sourdough, something like that.
Great.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll put it down below.
Okay,
the exact link so people can find that. And then is there anything else that you're working on, or that obviously we'll share Simple Farmhouse Life and Farmhouse on Boone?
Yeah, just all the usual stuff. No new projects is kind of what I would be good for the rest of the year, especially because of all the traveling.
Yes. Yeah, right on. Well, again, Lisa, thanks for taking the time to come by. This has been so fun. We love your content. It's been even more fun being able to meet your family. It makes it more special and meaningful. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.